Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It's Wednesday. This is Interesting Ideas. My name is Stan Houston, and I have a question. And I'd like to find out more of the answer, but I think I already know it. I'm originally from Minneapolis, and just recently on one of the news programs, it was pointed out that now Minneapolis is one of those places that actually is leading in the amount of carjackings. That incredible, terrible crime, carjackings, one of the leading cities in terms of carjackings in the United States. Well, that's not the Minnesota-Minneapolis nice people that I was used to. We left Minnesota, at least permanent residents, 15 years ago, though we go back all the time because we have a small little family legacy cabin there and still many family and friends there. But what happened? What's going on? And then I had something that might be the answer to that. And that took place when I was sitting in a nice little café waiting for breakfast on Emerald Isle, which is one of the Outer Banks Islands in North Carolina, where we presently live. Something happened that might partly be an answer to that question. And I think there's something to learn for us all. I'm Stan Houston. We've got some more interesting ideas. I hope they're helpful and useful to you. But we begin that program right now.
Come and listening to a radio station where the mighty host of heaven sing. Turn your radio on. Turn your radio on. Turn your radio on. Turn your radio on. If you want to hear the songs of Zion coming from the land of endless spring. Get in touch with God. Get in touch with God. Turn your radio on.
In the current state of the going and growing crime, the amount of carjackings has skyrocketed. And as I said, they said that it's up almost 300% in the city of Minneapolis. Well, I can't imagine anything a little bit more frightening, and particularly since they say that oftentimes the victims of carjackings are what you would call people like me, elderly, and oftentimes women and young women. And it's frightening. You can just imagine what it's like when someone comes up with a gun or maybe smashes at your window and threatens to kill you if you don't give them your car. Well, obviously most people are smart enough to know that the car is probably not worth their life, and off they go. And this is a going and growing thing. And I don't know why we can't do something more about it. But it doesn't seem to be a high priority of many people. Yet the whole point is that is the kind of crime that begins to ruin society. And when you can't be safe going on the road, when you can't be safe out of your home, when the amount of crime begins to affect ordinary people in very strange and very, very frightening ways, people eventually take some action, and sometimes the action is they just get out of town, and of course more and more people will leave those areas. The world is a mess, and right now we don't have the leadership in our world, and in many parts of our country here in America that seemingly is capable or wants to do something about these issues. But the thing that struck me most of all, and it was very, very sad, is the realization that these carjackers, these car hijackers, are primarily young men. And unfortunately, in many cases, they're minority men. And of course, the problem is they're not young men. They are oftentimes between the ages of 14, 17, and 18. And some have been as young as 11 and 12. So they're not men. They're boys. And we have boys who are going around. And because they're boys, they know that the penalty for being caught is probably some juvenile remedial situation, that if they do this, there's going to be very little punishment or very little consequence for what they do. I can't solve the problem, and you can't solve the problem either, but somebody has to work on reducing that problem. And I can't help but think we're missing a very vital thing. This is true. Every culture that has evolved to a measure of good society has realized that the teaching and training of young boys to become responsible men and maybe even gentlemen is a high priority. Whether it be the vision quest that the Native American tribes often had, the young braves taken by the elders of the community off into dangerous places and situations to test them, to encourage them, but also to train and discipline them, knowing that a young brave, a young boy becoming a man can be a very dangerous personality, and we have to get them to the point where they are growing into men who are responsible, and then will take their place as fathers and husbands of young children and married to a woman, and he will then be responsible for his wife and for his children. That's the way it seems to work best. And of course, obviously something has gone wrong. A 14, 15, 16-year-old boy who's carrying a gun and breaking into cars and hijacking them, obviously something has gone wrong in what teaching and training and bringing up he has. I'll just let it go at that, but I wanted you to think about that. And I'm very much convinced that one of the things we need to recover in our society is that we need to discover a way, and I think businesses could be a part of this. I believe certainly entrepreneurial companies where you don't have to deal with all of the HR or other regulations or political correctness, where some men particularly take as part of their responsibility in their businesses to bring in young men and to actually use the term that Donald Trump made famous, apprentice them. And they will learn how to do business, not as interns, but as apprentices. And part of that apprenticeship is not just how to, be really good at plumbing or construction or whatever the craft or skill is, or perhaps the profession of professionalism is, but they also teach them how to dress, how to act, how to treat women, how to be not only a man, but a gentleman. That's part of the deal. And if you want to have success in that business, you will learn that it's not only based on your business performance, it's based on your personal performance, your personal presence, and your contribution to society. That's the way it works. So I'm challenging those who have that kind of leadership to think about that. And maybe part of the answer I discovered one day at an interesting little café in Emerald Isle, North Carolina. May I tell you that story? I'm Stan Houston. These are interesting ideas. We'd love to hear from you because we would like to share your interesting ideas. So reach out to me at stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com. And let's see if we can get you on the radio and maybe even get you to do what will actually help build your life and business. You will have your own podcast radio program. Think what that might do for you and your business. I guarantee that it will be helpful and useful and most likely profitable if you take it seriously and do it well. I guarantee that. It will most likely be useful, practical, helpful, and profitable to you and your business if you're serious and do it well. We'll be back. I do confess that one of the things that, even though I loved Arizona and I really liked Minnesota before there was a lot of those kinds of problems, I did. But when we moved to North Carolina, we found ourselves in a situation that we loved because many years ago, my wife Karen and our family, we raised our children while we were doing volunteer international broadcasting mission work in the Southern Caribbean. Beautiful, delightful. It was a rather primitive little island, but it was beautiful, and we learned to live with the primitive way it was at that time. Of course, now it's full of many resorts and a lot of that kind of life, but it was called Bonaire, and it was one of the most beautiful diving places in the world, down in the place of Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao. And you've probably heard at least of Aruba, maybe Curacao, but the littlest island was Bonaire, and that's where we lived, and we lived right on the sea. So we made, when we came to Carolina, we get to go and be within an hour and a half of the sea. And so we did. We spent a weekend on Emerald Isle, which we have become very infatuated with. We want to find that to be a place where we can hopefully get away to the beach every once in a while, maybe for a day or so, or a day and a half. We went into a well-regarded little café that specialized in what they called shrimp and grits. And of course, we are getting more and more familiar with grits. And so this little café and most of the businesses on this island were very, very much, and I found out it was intentional, they were small businesses, many of them family owned. There were very few of the big store, big franchises, chain fast food chains. In fact, in some cases, there were practically none. They were primarily family businesses that had been there for a while, and they made that a part of the experience. And this little place was known, and it was a delightful place. Just wonderful. And the food was great. We enjoyed it. But something else happened. Just about as we were waiting there, a family came in, and it was a man, woman, and 4 young boys. Probably between the ages somewhere between maybe 3 and 4 to about the oldest was 12 or 13. And they came in, and they all sat down. And I couldn't help but notice they sat there. They didn't pull out their phones. They made conversation with their brothers, with their mom and dad. And you could just sense that this was something a little bit different than what we see a lot. They were young gentlemen. They just had that air to them. You could tell. And I couldn't help but notice, and so I was brave enough to go over, and there they were, and I said to the father who was closest, and his wife was across the table, I said, I hope you don't mind, but I just want you to notice that I noticed that you have four boys here, and they're really nice and young. You're a good family. And she looked at me and said, "Sir, thank you very much, but you need to know we're not raising young boys. We're raising men." Wow. She knew exactly what I was saying, and she could say it better than I even said it, and obviously very intentional. And then that opened it up. "Yes," she said, "we know what is needed. We make sure. I'm not the mother of boys. I'm raising young men. I'm raising men." And you can let it sit on your head for a while. Their food came, and there they went. After they left, you could just tell. There was a high dysfunctional family. Obviously, with 4 young boys, you have issues, but they had obviously been raised and trained, and they had learned that there were things that they were expected to do, and certainly things they better not do. Yet there was no tyranny in that family that I could sense. It was just a fact that a culture had been established in that family by the father, who talked about how they're in terms of his own little work and business. And as the mother said, I'm raising men. 15 minutes. That's enough for today. I'll just let those ideas sit on your head. I'm Stan Houston. These are interesting ideas. Thank you for your time. Please reach out to me if you want to get in the podcast business and you need to learn how to do it, whether you do it or not. And if you want to know why I say that, just talk to me and I'll tell you. Everybody today must learn how to handle the broadcast arts. Whether you ever do a radio program or not, it is a media world, and unless you and your leadership team know how to do the work of being present and powerful and useful on the modern media, you're going to have a problem in terms of marketing communication and in knowing that today's world, it's not prospects, it's not clients, it's not customers. You have an audience, and you have to grow your audience. That's the world that's before us. We can help you do that. StanHouston@gmail.com, StanHouston@gmail.com. And then I have many, many years of business performance coaching. And if there's a way your company would like to improve, sales, marketing, strategy, leadership, I'll probably give you some very unique and different ways you can grow than you've ever heard before. We're very, very different. If you go to YouTube and just put up Stan Houston, you'll find a whole kinds of bunch of stuff, and some of it might be the stuff you need. So check it out. Reach out to me at StanHouston@gmail.com, StanHouston@gmail.com. Thank you for your time. You're very kind. I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for you giving me this time, and hopefully it's worthwhile and be helpful. And by God's good grace, I'll be back tomorrow. Bye for now.